Hello, I'm your host, Richard Baldwin with Legendary Physique, and I'm talking to Jerry Brainum about his January 2018 Applied Metabolics Newsletter. Now, last month, we had trouble with Skype, and we couldn't get the system to work and show both of us. And we couldn't get him on that screen. This month, the opposite happened. I don't know what's going on with Skype. We'll try to figure out these issues, but I want to still let you get a preview of the coming newsletter. So we're just letting it go the way it is. And I just put a picture of myself there, and he's like talking to my picture like I was talking to his last time, last month. So here we go. Hope you enjoy. So Jerry, I'm all excited about your January 2018 Applied Metabolics Newsletter. What do you have for us?
Well, I start out, this time of year after New Year's, Richard, a lot of people like eat badly over the holidays. They eat a lot of junk food or they drink too much alcohol. And a lot of them contemplate using what they call these detox diets, or I don't know if you've heard of these detox systems.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
I mean, some of them are pretty gross.
Yeah, I was, you like to live on fruit juice and all this weird stuff. Some of
Some
them
are detoxing by enemas and stuff.
Yeah.
So both ends of the alimentary tract.
Right, exactly. Right. Then clean yourself out, and then they show that you might see that sometimes, I haven't looked in a while, but they used to have these late night infomercials where the guy would say that people are walking around carrying like 20 pounds of feces in their intestines. I always got a laugh out of that one. And they had to be, they needed to be cleaned up, cleaned out, all this and that, So I said to myself, well, maybe this is a good time of the year to really look into this detox stuff and see if there's any merit to it at all.
Yeah.
And it's a very in-depth article. I looked at a lot of these detox plans, and I analyzed them, and then I talk about how the body actually detoxes. Your main organs involved in that are the liver and the kidneys, the skin, the lungs. You have a lot of detox things already built in your body,
Yeah, 24/7.
Right. And, the people that sell this stuff, they don't want you to know that, but you can't escape scientific facts. So, but I actually did find there are certain aspects of detox that are real, that are overlooked. In other words, in these medical professionals, when they write articles condemning detox, they're generally correct, but they overlook certain things like let's say heavy metals that can, or some of these environmental. You might have heard about the BP, the plastics and
PCBs or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. The endocrine disruptors. They mimic the effects of estrogen and they block testosterone. These things do get in the body and they do need to be detoxed. So I discussed that aspect too. So anybody reading this article will be able to learn the truth about, what's real and what isn't real about detoxification method. One of them you'll get a kick out of. It involved a detox method by L. Ron Hubbard. You know who he is.
Right away, I'm starting to laugh.
Right. And, the funny thing is, even before I looked into it, I said, this thing has got to be a fraud if he's involved. The Scientology founder. This is the guy who talks about aliens from other planets. I said, and it turned out to be quite a wild plan. One of the aspects, get this, you ready for this? You sit in a sauna for 5.5 hours, and then you go for a run right afterwards. That's two aspects of his detox. And then the rest of it involves some intake of nutrients, which isn't too bad. So, but the next...
sitting in the sauna that long, you better make sure you've got some potassium and sodium in your system.
Yeah. No, actually, they do tell you that. I mean, in his protocol, he recommends electrolytes. I mean, so to his credit, they do recommend that. But then another popular subject, and this is a question I've been asked. I actually did a video on this a while back. There's these products called selective androgen receptor modulators, or SARBs. And these things are newer drugs. They first were developed around 1998. That basically, as the name implies, they interact with androgen receptors. There's only one type of androgen receptor. There's two for estrogen, but there's one for androgens. And the way these things are designed, a lot of them are non-steroidal. Like testosterone, anabolic steroids, obviously they're steroids. Mm-hmm. These things are non-steroidal, yet they interact with the androgen receptor, and they allegedly produce some of all the good effects that you get from testosterone and anabolic steroids, including muscle size gains, without the androgenic side effects like possible prostate problems, acne, and all this and that. So what I did is the things were never approved, though. They're experimental drugs. And I said, well, where do you get this stuff? So I went online and I found a lot of websites selling this stuff. And, none of them were drug companies. These were just, people that I don't know where they made it, whether they made it in a bathtub. I don't know where they made this stuff.
Was the FDA even aware of it?
Well, the FDA is aware of it, and they issued a warning. Not long ago, they actually issued a warning telling people not to buy these SARMs. And they even closed down one guy who, this guy makes video. I don't even want to mention his name, but this guy, he calls himself Doctor something or other. I don't even remember his name. But he actually has a site where he's always pushing various kinds of steroid regimes. And he pushes, he actually sells SARMs, I believe. He was actually closed down by the Drug Enforcement Agency not long ago. So, because, again, he's selling a drug that was never approved by the FDA. They're experimental drugs. So I looked at the studies, and first I looked at the sites and looked at the claims. And some of the claims are pretty big. I mean, some of them claimed they were more powerful than anabolic steroids. They would put on pounds of muscle, and you get all the benefits of steroids with no side effects at all. Right?
The dream drug.
Yeah, and I said to myself, now, wait a minute. The first law of pharmacology is that if a drug didn't have side effects, it wouldn't work. So right away, I was suspicious. So then I looked into the existing medical literature on SARMs. There was a couple of studies with younger men, but none of them were athletes. And most of the studies involved old, frail people with sarcopenia or age-related muscle loss. And I have to admit, some of the studies did look very good, very good. But here's the thing. I didn't find any studies that didn't show side effects. And, but I was a little surprised to see that, the studies indicate you can actually build muscle mass with these drugs. But, again, there's so many myths about these things that I felt that there was an article necessary, beyond what I did in the video to explain exactly how these drugs work and their true benefits. And right before I wrote the article, a study came out, I believe it was in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They actually came out with a study where they purchased SARMs from all various websites, and they analyzed them using two different types of analysis. They analyzed the SARMs that they purchased online, and I discussed this study. It basically confirmed what I said in my original video on SARBs, which is when you purchase drugs online, whether it's SARMs or anabolic steroids or growth hormone peptides or whatever, you're taking a risk because you're not buying it from legitimate drug companies, and you don't know what the contents are. You don't know whether it has contaminants. And worst of all, you don't know what the potency is. I mean, it might not have anything in it. It might be underdosed. I discussed what this study found, but, just to give a hint, let me put it this way. If I didn't know anything about SARMs and I read my article, I would think twice about buying this stuff online. I'm not saying all of it's fake, some of it's real, what they sell on. But the problem is it's like a three-hand Monte game. What is it, three-card Monte? You don't know which one's the real one. That's the problem. That's the real problem. So that's a very in-depth article on SARM. And then I came across an interesting study. There's been various amino acids have been touted for burning fat, such as arginine and ornithine, and a couple of others, and mainly because these amino acids are known to promote the release of growth hormone. But I found an amino acid that might stimulate fat oxidation during exercise that is not really a growth hormone. It's a very common amino acid. And I found actually 3 studies on it. One of them was an animal study where it showed a really potent depression of appetite in the animals, which of course, actually accelerates weight loss if you're a human being, if you can control the appetite. But the other studies were human studies showing that if you take this amino acid in moderate amounts, doesn't require a large amount, if you take it before exercise, you burn a considerably larger amount of fat during the exercise.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, so that's the third one. And but with those 3 articles, it came out to like just under 50 pages, something like 49.5 pages. So it's a good amount of reading. But as with every issue of Applied Metabolics, I go into extreme depth and explain everything. I try to answer any question any possible reader could have. So you walk away with the articles, and let's say you're completely informed on whatever I wrote about. You won't have to worry about. There'll be no questions remaining. Let me
exactly. That's why I like them.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I always put a lot of work and research into these articles, and if I'm not sure about something, I say so. I'm not not like one of these guys where I think I know everything and I could predict exactly what's going to happen in every individual. You have to make some intellectual concessions in that regard, and I do. I just I go by the research, and I also add, of course, the big feature of my newsletter is that it's not just reporting on research or writing about various things. It's also the fact that I have all this many years of actual experience. A lot of the people that have similar publications, they couldn't come close to what I have. I mean, I have like 55 years of training experience, and this whole time I've been studying. I actually started studying nutrition and physiology and biochemistry when I was 12 years old, and I've been studying it ever since.
Well, the thing about you, Jerry, is you're not just some guy that's read some books and then writes stuff. You've trained boxers, you've trained bodybuilders. You have practical experience on top of all the scientific knowledge you have, and you have the ability to combine the two and come out with what really works.
Well, that's an important aspect because as you say, I do have practical experience. I put some of these things to a real world test. Whereas a lot of the people just go entirely by the science studies. And the problem with science studies is that sometimes you have a substance that initially looks very promising, but it turns out to be useless.
Yeah.
An example in that regard, I don't know if you've heard of, it is an amino acid called D-aspartic acid, which initial studies show when they gave it to older men, it caused a 42% increase in testosterone. So wow. Based on it, they started marketing and putting it in these, pro-hormone formulas and talking about it as a testosterone booster. But then when they tested in young men who were involved in weight training, it had no effect whatsoever. And a recent study which looked into long-term use of D-aspartic acid also found that it was basically useless. I'll probably write this up in a future issue because a lot of people still ask me about aspartic acid. But my point is that this is a substance that really looked good initially as a means of increasing testosterone, but when push came to shove, when with time, it turned out to be virtually useless. But it works well in animals. In animals, it does increase testosterone, which is still another reason why you can't extrapolate animal studies to humans, which a lot of these blog sites and these so-called science sites, they do that all the time. They'll write up, they'll animal study of something increases testosterone, and then they'll write and tell people how much they should take as if it'll do the same thing in humans. But that's not the way it works. It doesn't work that way.
Absolutely, and you make that clear in every issue.
That's right. I mean, this is why I mean, I'll mention animal studies in some of my articles, and if the animal study is really good enough where I think it can be extrapolated to human usage, I'll write it up.
But you usually have a caveat that we have to wait till the human studies to know for sure.
Always say that. Yeah. It's very important that people know that because again, what affects animals doesn't always translate to humans. For example, just to give you a quick example, a lot of things that cause cancer in animals, will not cause cancer at all in humans, and vice versa. So I mean, animal studies are just preliminary studies. They're not the end studies. The end studies come with a repetition of several human studies. Then that's when you start to say, well, this stuff must be real. So
how's the weather out there? I'm dying here. This is like, I wanted to wish our viewers Happy New Year, since this is our first one of the new year. But boy, the temperature's dropping in Florida. It snowed in Tallahassee, Florida.
Wow.
That's about 80 miles north of here. Luckily, it hasn't snowed here, but it's gotten down into the 30s, which is pretty low for this area.
It is. Well, over here in California, it's gotten much cooler, I mean, but today it was supposedly almost 70 degrees, fairly nice, but the temperature at night drops, quite a bit, where it's been averaging about where I am. The temperature at night's been averaging about 50 degrees or just a little bit under that, maybe 48. No snow, but when I walk my dogs at night, I do have to wear a heavy jacket,
Yeah.
But it's bearable, I mean, but
are you one that makes New Year's resolutions?
No, not really. I don't actually. I you know what? I just hope for the best. My only resolution is to hope for the best. I want to, I'm getting older. I want to try and stay as healthy as I can. Like a lot of other people, I have certain genetic problems which are catching up with me now because of my advanced years. They're showing up, which tends to make me a little conscious of it. But I just hope for the best. I mean, I don't make specific things like about losing a certain amount of weight. Although I did make, if you want to call it one slight New Year's resolution, I've always wanted to grow a beard.
Are you kidding?
Seriously, I've had this mustache since 1974, I think it was. I grew it as a joke, and I liked the way it looked, so I kept it. And I always wanted to know what I'd look like in a beard, but my fear is that my hair is like what do they call it? Salt and pepper. It's mostly salt now. But I mean, the thing is that I'm afraid that if I grow a beard, it's going to be my good friend Andreas Colling. You know Andreas, right?
Yeah.
Andreas has this huge beard that makes sometimes they call him the muscular Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Andreas, but I don't like that kind of look. I mean, I like a nice, smaller beard.
Well, he did it because he has partial paralysis of his face, right, to cover that up.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but see, I wanted what I'm saying is, if I grow a beard and I see it's white, I shave it off immediately. I don't want a white. If I can have a beard that still has some natural color in it, that's okay. But if I start to see a white beard, because that'll make me look about 20 years older than I am, and that's pointless to me.
The only resolution I have is every year in January I start making sure my diet's real clean, and by June or July I try to peak out every year just to see if I can still do it. So that's the only. If you call that a New Year's resolution, that's really the same thing I've done since my bodybuilding career.
It's interesting because you probably already know this, but there's another famous bodybuilder who's been doing that for years. You know who it is, right?
No.
Frank Zane.
Oh.
Every
really?
year. Yeah, and I haven't spoken to Frank in a long time, but I know that every year, long past his competition days, he would peak out right around the same time as you, like right. When he used to compete years ago in September.
Yeah.
He would start during the summer. He would train and adjust his diet and training just as if he was training for the Olympic, and he did this all up to his 60s. I mean, so if you see some of the shots of him when he's in really good shape in his late 60s, that was taken when he was doing this peak phase. He does it every year. I mean, he's in his 70s now. I don't know whether he's still doing it, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was. He did this. It's actually a pretty good thing to do. It kind of keeps you in practice, so to speak.
Yeah, because I hear so many people say that got fat, it just snuck up on them, and I've been always afraid that would happen, so I just peak out every spring. Well, Jerry, it was great talking to you, and we wish our viewers the best, whether they make New Year's resolutions or not. We hope this is a great year, and we'll talk to you next month.
Okay, great to talk. Always great to talk to you, Richard.
You too, Jerry. Have a good one.
You too. Take care.
If you want the latest in exercise and nutrition science, then sign up for Jerry Brainum's Applied Metabolics Newsletter.